welcome to the 4th edition of Foundation's annual Digital Transformation Workshop. This year, we're inevitably reaching out to you virtually, but we're all hoping that we'll soon be able to meet in person again. My name is Neophytos Kolokotronis. I'm an innovation specialist here at Foundation, and I'll be hosting tonight's event. For the next hour and a half, with the help of our guests, all of whom are experts in their fields, we will be touching upon topics of digital transformation from various angles and talking about how people, businesses, and services are evolving. Diva will start by introducing us to EIT Digital's activities in our region, followed by Antonis, who will be explaining how data and technology are transforming the real estate industry. Up next, Richard will share his thoughts on the future and the possible challenges that lay ahead for us, and then Philippos will present the key insights from Foundation annual reports, digital transformation, and startups in Greece, both of which are being published today with new editions. Finally, we will conclude our evening with a panel discussion between Christos, Eleftheria, and George, who will be discussing on the importance of upskilling and reskilling in the COVID and post-COVID era. So to get us started, I would like to invite to our digital stage Diva Tommei, Director for EIT Digital at Italy, a long-time partner of Foundation in the region. Hello, Diva. Good evening.
Hi. Good afternoon, everyone. Can you all hear me?
Yes, perfectly. Can you hear us?
Fantastic. Yes.
Great. It's great to see you again. So I hope everything is great with you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I will be sharing my screen now.
Yes, please.
So please do let me know if you can see my presentation as a single slide.
Yeah, we can see it full screen now. So
excellent. Fantastic. So thanks very much for the invitation. It's true, Foundation and EIT Digital have been long-standing partners, and I'm extremely happy, and I appreciate the invite to be able to tell you today about what we've been doing with EIT Digital for the past 10 years. As you can see from my signature, I'm the director for Italy, but also Greece, Malta, and Cyprus. So I have a really strong, pleasure in actually being able. This is one of the few times that I'm able to have such a wide Greek audience. So I'm really very happy about that. So let me start by telling you real briefly about the larger community that EIT Digital is a part of. Of course, EIT Digital has the EIT in it. EIT is the European Institute of Innovation and Technology. And this is an independent EU body that was born in 2008 to strengthen Europe's ability to innovate. Now, EIT has several KICs, so-called. A KIC is a knowledge and an innovation community. EIT Digital is a KIC. And we have the specific focus and strategic mission to drive digital transformation across Europe. This is our mandate. So let me start by painting a little bit of a picture when it comes to what we consider as digital challenges in the EU. First, we would all be able to agree on the fact that digital is definitely a hot topic, but it is dominated by the US and China currently. Also, that the EU is quite a fragmented market. As a matter of fact, we still are struggling to see unicorns, so-called emerging European unicorns. And of course, another challenge is the fact that heavy investments are being done in digital overseas, while in Europe is just not big enough, the investment that we do as a whole. And another element very important for us at EIT Digital is that from research to market-ready innovation, it's still a very long journey. There is no sort of accelerated path or bridge. And of course, we're all living this digital skills gap. It's not only a European issue, it's a global issue, but it definitely also pertains to Europe. And of course, without Europe in a leadership position when it comes to digital, it starts to become evident that there's a global value gap. So we see things like digital divide, data privacy issues, fake news coming up. And I think this is partly because as Europe, we usually take up that leadership role when it comes to policy making and value-driven policy making. So what we are in need of, I would say, I would argue, is a paradigm shift. And how so? Well, first of all, we want to shift the focus to Europe by activating all digital innovation communities. So create a system. Second of all, support cross-country digital businesses and entrepreneurs. Co-invest with large communities of innovators and investors. Accelerate this market readiness level by bringing together industry and universities. Educate the next generation of digital entrepreneurs and young professionals. And of course, invest in value-driven digital innovation to define a new economy that is inclusive, fair, and sustainable. Our vision as EIT Digital is this. We believe in a strong digital Europe that comes together to face its challenges, that is globally competitive, and delivers value-driven innovation that, as I just said, is inclusive, fair, and sustainable. Now, our mission as EIT Digital is threefold. First of all, we empower a pan-European ecosystem of innovators from industry, small and medium enterprises, startups, scale-ups, universities, RTOs, and students to work together in a multidisciplinary approach so that they can deliver together market-ready innovation. And in what form? As digital ventures, digital products, and digital entrepreneurs. Our mission, the second part of our mission, is to support the growing community of more than 200 digital ventures that have been born thanks to us, and as well support the best more than 400 European startups to scale up their businesses across different EU markets. So create that network that enables scaling up very quickly. And of course, put all of these ventures in contact with an investor community that to date, around EIT Digital, counts more than 900 investors. Thirdly, our mission is also to support the digital transformation within large corporate partners. Across all digital focus areas that we have our sort of investment strategy divided in. You can see them here: digital tech, cities, finance, well-being, and industry, and facilitate open innovation processes and enabling the access to all the relevant digital stakeholders that are within our community to these large corporations. So if we look at EIT Digital as an ecosystem, we count, as we said, more than 300 European partners. Now, we're talking specifically in our case about the Trento node ecosystem, because this is the node that within EIT Digital has the jurisdiction to take care, of course, of the Italian partnership, but also the Greek, Maltese, and Cypriot partnership. As you can see today, we have 63 partners. We are quite a large ecosystem. Of these 63, 55 are industry, 5 are universities, 2 research centers, and 1 association. Now, out of all of these, only 2 come from Greece. So we really, my objective for 2021 is really to try and bring more partners from Greece within the node sub-ecosystem. So now, just to move into sort of a panoramic overview of what EIT Digital offers as activities and what ways of engaging with the partners and between partners there are opportunities, I want to summarize here that EIT Digital has a sort of a triangular, approach. On the one side, we have education. With the Entrepreneurial Academy and our four schools. Then we have our Innovation Factory, which is venture building. And then we have the Accelerator, which is our scale up, volume and growth accelerator for European businesses. So if we start at the EIT Digital Master School, this is a program that we put together with the 17 of the 65 universities that are within our partnership that deliver also master school courses together with us. There are 8 master school programs to date. We have more than 2,200 European students who have graduated from our master schools. Of course, we have many Italian students, and we hope to count more Greek students soon as we have universities also from Greece. And each program includes 5 modules about innovation and entrepreneurship, which is our contribution as EIT Digital, because what we can bring to the table is our industrial partners bringing business user cases for students to work on. And so creating this real holistic and 360 approach to technology, because we know that technology is only a tool. Unless you use it for some purpose and some value, it has no meaning. So we try and really get to that application side of things with our students. This is just to show you that it's divided between 2 years. Maybe you get a lot of perks, job mobility, 2 degrees. It's really a great school. Between the first and the second year, you get to do a summer school wherever you want. I mean, of course, we've had to do them online this year, but usually they're in different cities all around Europe, and it's really fun for students. And this is an occasion for them to work on those business cases that I told you about, that our industry partners make available for our students. Then we have our doctoral school as well. In this scenario, industry and universities, they come together to define a project proposal, and we co-finance that 50%. We also have the professional school, which is an industry relevant, let's call it high quality education for young professionals that want to deep dive into a blended course, a part online, part physical, that they can choose from the portfolio of courses that we offer. And these courses are developed together with our partners as part of the open call that is also where our partners submit innovation proposals. When we look at the EIT Digital Innovation Factor, we have an annual open call approximately between March and May, and our partners in teams together, they can submit to us proposals for innovative products or innovative ventures. And we co-finance them, co-invest in them up to 600,000 for venture creating proposals. This is just to show you some results from the this year's call, so implemented in 2021. We've had an acceptance rate of 30% and an outcome that has given out in selection phase more than 23 million euros to our partners. Finally, just to show you the EIT Digital Accelerator metrics, they are very important metrics. We've helped a lot of scale-ups successfully grow. And they don't need to be partners. Actually, they can't for the time in which they are in the accelerator be partners of EIT Digital, but they're part of the accelerator. And as part of the acceleration process, they also get to enter into this community of investors, early stage and later stage, that of course gives them, facilitates them when it comes to access to finance. These are the results that we've achieved in the past 10 years. I won't read them out loud. But what I would like to tell you about is what we have as common goals with our partners, because we are an ecosystem, and without that, we're nothing. We don't have a mission, we don't have an objective anymore. So this is very important because we are both driven, our partners and EIT Digital, by the desire to make an impact. We are united by a common vision for a strong digital Europe that leads the world. We believe that a strong digital Europe is possible only if multiple communities of innovators come together to work on the challenges of the next digital era that is ushering in. And then finally, we believe that in a strong digital Europe, there is only space for innovation that is inclusive, fair, and sustainable. So if we align all on all of these common goals, we will be very effective partners, and we will go into a very beautiful journey together. Our ambition, I would say, to leave you with this concept. Our ambition is to contribute to the European innovation scene with long-term impact goals, and this means ensuring that by 2030, at least one third of the world's top 50 digital companies will be European. And this is, it's quite a goal, but we strongly believe in it. And we support the community to reach this ambition through all of these activities and opportunities that we offer them, that you can see listed here, facilitating the discussion on trends of the future, identifying together key strategic areas that will drive Europe's growth and resilience for the next 50 years, find the right partners to work with on innovation proposals, co-invest with our partners in their ambitious proposals, support the growth of digital ventures and digital entrepreneurs, and finally, bridge the gap between native digital talent and industry. So I will stop here. Thank you so much for the attention, and give the floor back to you.
Thank you, Diva, for a comprehensive overview of EIT Digital's activities. Hopefully, we can work together going forward to increase the number of partners from Greece and from the wider region. So, up next, I would like to. Hi, Diva. Thank you very much for the presentation. So, up next, I'd like to invite to our stage Antonis Markopoulos, co-founder and CEO at Prosperity, who will be explaining how data and technology are transforming the real estate industry. Antonis, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Neofite. Thank you so much, EIT Digital, but also Found.ation, for this kind invitation to this very interesting workshop. My intention today is to give you an overview of an industry like real estate and how this industry is being transformed through technology and data. Real estate is probably the biggest industry in the world. It's the biggest asset class in the world, more than $110 trillion asset class. But it's an industry that for the last many years has failed to be transformed in a way like other industries has managed to do so. So not only in Greece, but also in other markets, European, but also around the globe, there is a market that it's a lack of data, a lack of transparency of data, that creates a lack of trust between the stakeholders. It's a very fragmented market, so there are a lot of complex processes with different stakeholders of those processes, and that creates a very inefficient way of doing business, of completing transactions and investments. So there is a lot of manual-based and paper-based processes. And the overall customer experience, I would say that it's not a good one. I would say that it's a bad customer experience. So it's very hard to scale. It's very hard, it's very challenging to effectively manage a portfolio of properties and effectively manage the volumes of global real estate assets. So it's time that technology comes into the real estate industry, and these precedent times and times of the pandemic can be changed the whole industry by putting in place technology and data. So real estate is changing, and it's changing fast. So the investors and the property portfolio investor will have to move fast. We have to leverage new technologies and trends. First of all, due to pandemic, but not only because of that, people are looking for contactless solutions. They're looking for solutions that put in place themselves, but also offer them a very rich customer experience in terms of digital services. Moreover, on that, governments are changing. So from public sector, and there are a lot of initiatives around different countries, how they can digitize services around the real estate, how they can create data that are going to be helpful for the property portfolio investors, but also for individual buyers and sellers. So if we want to understand a little bit the value chains in the, let's say, in the property world, in the real estate world, there are three different, let's say, pillars of activities. One is the preparation of an asset to be commercialized, to be managed, to be sold. The secondly is the day-by-day management of an asset. And of course, there is the commercialization of those, including sales, but also rental. From one side, we have the supply side and all those stakeholders that are offering, they are owning, let's say, properties and real estate assets. On the other side, it's a demand. The demand might be local, might be multinational demand. And within this ecosystem, there are a lot of different stakeholders, lawyers, engineers, public notaries, a lot of different public administration like land registries. So there are a lot of different stakeholders on that industry. So how technology and data will come to transform this very fragmented industry is a challenge of our era. So real estate needs to become more innovative, needs to adopt those kind of technologies to accelerate the digital transformation, and of course to create new operating frameworks that will enable eventually the real-time analysis and automation of processes. So PropTech is a very emerging, let's say, industry. A lot of funds are being raised around the world from PropTech businesses. PropTech 10 years ago was around, in terms of financing, in terms of funding, it was an industry of around 30 to 40 million. At the moment is in an industry of 30 to 40 billion. So a lot of institutional investors are investing heavily on those kind of companies. And the reason they're doing that is that they're going to play a significant and pivotal role to transform the real estate business. They will create transparency, they will create operational efficiency, but the bottom line of this investment has to do about the overall customer experience that they would like to change regarding the real estate sector. So when we're talking about technologies, we might include there the automation of processes, the workflow technologies, the management of data, how you can marketing the assets in a very efficient way using artificial intelligence, using also machine learning algorithms to capture efficiently the data and to create a more, let's say, transparent environment for all the stakeholders. Either it's a seller, or it's a buyer, or it's a tenant. Then a lot of efforts are being put on the data side and how big data are coming here to transform this industry. So there are a lot of different use cases around the world that a lot of people are putting as the first priority, let's say, how they can create valuation tools in order to evaluate accurately real estate assets. But it's not only that, it's also about accessing real-time data. It's providing more customer-centric services and more quickly, let's say. and to design better and more targeted marketing strategy. I think that the key point here is how you are doing that. And how you are doing that, it's a key point for the future. If you go on trying to collect data one by one, let's say, for each property, is not an efficient way. So you need to find the right sources. You need to clean the data out of these resources to establish a very clear processes of data collecting mechanism, not only from public data, but also private data. So here it's important to mention the vital role of the governments, how they can open the data up to the public related to what? Not only to real estate, but also to infrastructure data, to other kind of data that affects eventually the decision on the real estate business. Just to mention here that report from McKinsey, but in 2017 says the following, that when buyers select to buy a property, only 40% of his decision is based on traditional data. And by traditional data, we mean what? We mean the price, of course, which is very sensitive criteria in order to buy a property. We mean the size, probably the number of bedrooms if we're talking about residential property, and a few other things. But the report says that 60% is according to non-traditional data. So there are a lot of different kinds of data that eventually affects the decision of buying a property in the real estate. So how you manage to collect those kinds of data and to create algorithms in order to recognize the customer preference in order to do more targeted marketing in the real estate business and increase the outcome, increase the conversion rate for an investor if he wants to sell properties, to find the right customers with the right needs, is a key issue for the future. So what we are doing in Prosperity is exactly that. We're in, let's say, in the middle of this ecosystem. We have created a platform, a digital platform, offering an end-to-end service from the preparation of an asset, of the collection of the data, not only of this asset, but also for the neighborhood, for the infrastructure, for all the kind of data that we could collect. And then we are preparing the assets to be presented in a very efficient way. And with very rich content, using cameras with AI, recognizing the spaces, creating new floor plans, creating also drone videos for showing the surroundings of a neighborhood. And then we are doing the management of the assets on a day by day. And by management, we mean two major things: revenue management and tenants management. Against the maintenance and the cost side of the property. Last but not least, we are using all the possible tools of nowadays to commercialize effectively the assets. And on that exact points, the data are playing a very important role. As I told you before, how we analyze customer preferences, customer data on the demand side to increase the conversion on the sales side. On the sales side is a very critical point for our product. So we offer, let's say, tech-enabled services and data-driven services across this property value chain. So we do have not only a customer end-to-end journey, but we do have also a property end-to-end journey in our platform. So this platform acts as a single interface between all the stakeholders, between the seller, either an individual one or institutional owner with managing hundreds or thousands of properties. And on the other side, it's a buyer or the tenant side, together with all the other stakeholders, like as I told you, lawyers, engineer, public notaries, etc. So we have created a digital ecosystem in order to manage the full journey of a property and a customer within the real estate industry. It goes without saying that if the real estate industry does not change in the upcoming years, this will create a huge issue to the existing business. I strongly believe that customers on both sides, supply and demand side, they want something new, they want something digital, they want contactless transactions, and they want transparency. They have to get the right data on the right time in order to get the right decision. So this is what Prosperity is willing to do to offer such an experience to its clients. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Antonis, for sharing all your experience on the real estate industry with us. To move on, I would like to welcome on our virtual stage Richard Watson, futurist in residence at the Cambridge Judge Business School. Good evening, Richard.
Good evening.
How's everything there?
Yeah, pretty good. Thank you very much. How's everything there?
Doing well, doing well. So, Richard, we will be discussing on the possible futures that lay ahead, the challenges that come ahead for us, and hopefully you offer some guidance on the future as well for us.
Okay, thank you. Let's fingers crossed this works. Yassas, kalispera. Here we go. Is this working?
Yes, we can now see you full screen.
Fantastic. Okay. No, it's been a pretty strange year, but I think despite this, I'd like to think that people have actually never had it so good. I mean, even with the pandemic and a number of other really serious challenges, most notably climate change, I think life for most people around the world has improved very significantly over the past few decades, at least physically. I mean, people are living a lot longer. There is far less extreme poverty. There are fewer infant deaths and there are fewer wars. There's also more women in education and also work, and at least a recognition, if not a reality, of diversity. And there's also the tantalizing prospect of technological and scientific solutions to problems that seemed unsolvable only a matter of years ago. Problems like carbon sequestration, grid-scale energy storage, energy-efficient desalination, mass-scale solar, and the removal of rubbish, especially microplastics from the oceans. And yet, despite this, there seems to be, to me, a growing crisis of confidence in the West in particular. Now, this might be because relative to the East, the West is in decline economically, or at least that's what people say. It could also be that there's a perception of too much change, too much instability, and too much uncertainty. And this is making people anxious, which makes them want to actually go backwards rather than forwards. They want to dwell on the past glories and the supposed certainties of history. But maybe actually that's not quite it. Maybe Europe in particular is not falling behind, but surging ahead. Maybe Europe and the Mediterranean, the southern Mediterranean in particular, is at the forefront of seeing things in a new light, of questioning whether all change is necessarily progress, and seeing some very new ideas in the context of some very old philosophical thinking. Thinking that is potentially capable of remodeling capitalism, that is potentially capable of remodeling free markets, globalization, and technological change for the benefit of the many, not just the few. Now, I'll come back to this thought towards the end, but in the meantime, I'd like to summarize the emerging digital landscape. So that's me with my friend Alex when we were both at Imperial College. Now, I designed this map back in 2015, And it's just a broad overview of the emerging scientific and technological landscape. It obviously doesn't cover everything. It's just a snapshot. And we highlighted 5 key technologies that we thought were changing the future or shaping the future, namely digital, nano, neuro, green or clean tech, and biotech. Neuro is obviously brain. And the timeline goes out to the year 2030. And we separated the present, which is more or less now, maybe going into the future a year or two, but more or less now, from the probable future and the possible future. And I think this is quite an interesting segmentation. Probable, by the way, we were defining as at least a chance of at least 50% of happening by the year 2030. And possible, we were defining as possibly quite unlikely, but not physically impossible. And some of the entries on the table include fully autonomous robotic surgery, the use of artificial intelligence in hospitals and doctors' surgeries, lip reading CCTV cameras, mood sensing machines, vibration energy harvesting, and my absolute personal favorite, windows that are highly efficient solar cells. So transparent glass that is also a very efficient way of processing solar energy into electricity. This, by the way, if you Google this, you will find this online. I know it's impossible to read this. It's pretty difficult to read this in a conference projected really large. I'm looking at this myself on a very small laptop, and it's almost impossible to read anything on it. So I apologize about that, but you can find this very, very easily online. Or if you really struggle, get in touch with me or Found.ation. We'll send it to you. Now, this second chart, this was created at Imperial College a little bit more recently. By the way, with Imperial College, I was part of this practice called the Technology Foresight Practice. So we were concerned with trying to work out which technologies were coming next. And we were purely concerned with technology. We're not interested at the time with geopolitics or economics or anything like that. This is purely looking at technology. And I mean, this is a table, I guess, more than a chart. And it features 100 disruptive technologies. Well, it's actually 99 disruptive technologies and a really good joke, or we think it's a good joke that you have to find. And we've ranked the potential for socioeconomic disruption on one side against time on the other. Time is split between sooner and later. I've done things in the past where you put actual dates on, I mean, really specific dates. And at the end of the day, who really knows? So we let it be a little bit more looser than that. Now, don't be fooled. These are guesses, but I would like to think they're informed guesses. And the point of this table is to stimulate debate. Obviously, with the time horizon I just described, the bottom left-hand corner, the green element, if you like, are very near future. Then you go a little bit further out into horizon 2, the yellow, horizon 3 is the red. And around the edge, we came up with this term, which I quite like, called ghost technologies, which is a bit similar to the outer ring on that last chart. These are things that are unbelievably unlikely to happen, but again, they're not completely impossible. And the text on the right, these are companies that are actively investing in research and development in these areas. Now, one really important thing to stress is this does not refer to invention. Most of these, the vast majority of these things have already been invented by these companies on the right. This table is concerned with common usage, you know, when these things become common. So you've got autonomous or self-driving cars on here, which have obviously been invented a number of years ago, but they're not common. You don't see dozens and dozens and dozens of them every day. This chart is about the period when you possibly do. Again, we're only talking about the technology. There's no discussion here about the interaction between the technologies. There's no discussion of the ethics surrounding some of these things, which I'm going to come back to. The other point to note is, I think what you're getting a glimpse of here is the so-called fourth industrial revolution. This is, you know, the merging of the physical, biological, and digital worlds. One thing to note, by the way, on the right-hand text, is these companies that are investing in all of these things, the vast majority of these companies are American. You know, there's the odd German, the odd English company, the odd Israeli company. And the FANGs are quite dominant, along with people like Elon Musk, particularly in some of the crazier technologies around the edges. Now, the key platform here I should possibly just explain some of the things on here, I guess, and I'll come on to that in a minute. But the key platform here is clearly digital, with a very strong emphasis on artificial intelligence, particularly quite strong or broad AI as opposed to narrow AI, which we've had for quite a while. And beyond that, the broad categorizations include data ecosystems, essentially where things are talking to each other, extreme automation, which to some extent means the removal of humans, human augmentation, human-machine interaction, particularly things like brain-computer interfaces, where we no longer speak to our machines, we actually just think things and they happen, and we've got these already to some extent with thought-controlled wheelchairs and computers, and what we've called Smart Planet. And Smart Planet is a world where things that were once just things that were inert, stupid essentially, have gained a level of intelligence and possibly even a level of self-awareness, again, possibly talking to each other, and they're generating data in near real time that can help humans to make decisions, particularly decisions regarding the future. There's obviously quite a lot of Internet of Things, Internet of Everything, as I prefer to call it, in there, but it goes beyond that. Now, not all of these things will happen, or they may appear for a brief moment and then disappear. We may decide we don't like them, we may discard them, reject them. Others might be quite temporary technologies. Something that nobody's thinking of at the moment comes along and just displaces these technologies. Even so, I mean, what are the implications if even a small number of these technologies become mainstream? How might it change our lives and the lives of our children and our children's children and so on? The most obvious consequence to me would seem to be acceleration. Things are just going to happen faster, possibly too fast. There's an American evolutionary biologist called E.O. Wilson, and he once said that we've got the brains of the Paleolithic, the institutions of the medieval, and the technology of the gods. Technology, a lot of technology, particularly digital technology, is capable of exponential change. Humans, not quite so much. Now, I think this tension between the capability of machines, and let's not forget, we're talking about machines here created by a very small slice of humanity. I mean, it's generally young white men in California inventing a lot of this stuff. And the tension between those machines and humanity is going to be quite interesting going forward. I mean, I think most people struggle to understand how most machines work. So that's going to be a little bit interesting. That's unless, of course, we simply merge with our machines. I mean, this is a sort of favorite of science fiction. I mean, maybe the human race splits between natural organic humans and synthetic or hybrid humans, but I'll leave that for the science fiction writers. Now, another consequence of a lot of this stuff happening is probably around personalization. And that could be a very, very good thing. We're beginning to see the early days of personalized medicine, where treatments I receive are vastly different to the treatment anyone else receives. But this might also lead to a world where we no longer have anything in common with anyone else. In other words, we end up living in our own personalized versions of reality, totally unconnected to the experience of others. And it could be the great irony of global connectivity becomes isolation from each other. Perhaps one of the consequences of creating machines that think and connect is that we humans end up doing neither of these things. Now, we should, of course, consider the impact of these technologies on natural resources, especially energy and water, but also sustainability more generally. And I think Diva was absolutely right and nailed it in terms of thinking of innovation, in terms of it being inclusive, fair, and sustainable. I couldn't agree with that more. Unless we end up living in space, we're going to create potentially a very crowded future in which our machines exhaust our supply of resources, particularly if we continue to design in obsolescence, particularly if we continue to pollute the air and the water and throw waste and e-waste in particular into landfill. We need to start innovating. We need to start designing and especially consuming, and the two are obviously very linked, with a conscience. Now, critically, there is also the matter of trust, particularly trust regarding, or consent, I should say, regarding privacy, security, data ownership, and data use. If you don't have digital trust, this digital future barely exists. I think it would just fall to pieces in the same way that if you didn't have trust more generally, society fails to function. And we are already seeing some very serious breaches of trust and the emergence of data monopolies, which interestingly, Europe is pretty much at the forefront of confronting. It'll be interesting to see which direction the UK goes in after Brexit. In my view, a digital future will only work well if digital trust is almost absolute, and also if the benefits of digitalization are equally shared. Now, as I said earlier, there are some philosophical questions as well, questions that would not be out of place in classical Athens. For example, what is the nature of a good life? Should all private data be treated as a public good for civic purposes? Should we trust AI? Should we trust machines more than humans? Should we trust battlefield robots to make the right decisions on our behalf, for example? Or should such machines always have human oversight? I personally think there should always be an element of human oversight. Personally, I'm a strong supporter of open AI, open artificial intelligence. And it's a bit like Intel Inside. It's, I'd like to see a sort of digital future with humans inside, whereby all decisions made by machines, and I'm obviously primarily talking about software and algorithms, all decisions made by machines can be widely and openly investigated and discussed, especially when things go wrong. And clearly things will go wrong. I mean, I just cannot see a future where all this works perfectly. Things will go wrong, and they could go very, very wrong because of the connected nature of these systems. We could end up with systemic failures rather than just individual failures. The other thing we need to be careful of as AI progresses is that machines will make decisions that humans, even their designers, do not understand. And we need to make sure, in a sense, that doesn't happen, or we rebalance that so that we can investigate to understand why machines have made certain decisions. But of course, there are many elements of the future that we're struggling ourselves to understand at the moment, partly because they are presenting us with simultaneously very new and very old questions. I mean, for example, in the middle of that chart, in the yellow area, we've got sex robots, which I'm actually quite happy is on there, because I thought the university was going to ask us to remove that because it was potentially quite controversial, but they let us keep it on. Should we allow sex robots? Should they be regulated? Should they have rights? Perhaps we need to liberate our imaginations a bit in order to have meaningful conversations about such matters. And like anything else on this chart, almost all of them, they are around. They're just not very common. They don't work very well yet. But in another 10 years, it could be very, very different. Now, I think overall, there is very little debate currently linking digitalization with questions about equality, fairness, or sustainability, some of the things that Diva was talking about, let alone how future technologies might impact the human condition or human free agency, the ability of individuals to make their own decisions. What of empathy or compassion in a world of effective computing, a world of emotionally aware machines, where you could argue we are being manipulated by these machines? What of loneliness if we surround ourselves with machines? I think that innovation, and particularly digital innovation, should not only be sustainable, but human-centric going forward. The human heart has to be considered alongside the human head. Now, ethics is something I explored in another map. This has got nothing to do really with digitalization, although it's touched on. This was a chart I created back in April of this year, and it's looking at globalization post-pandemic. And you can ignore all the words around the edge and just focus on the compass in the middle. This is essentially a 2x2, and that's the axis in the middle. And the two axes driving change going forward are natural systems change. And I'm primarily talking about climate change, but also, biodiversity and a bunch of other stuff. And then the second order effects of that. So you've got chaos and control against, for example, climate change, but then you've also got chaos and control in terms of the human reaction to that chaos and control, if you're following me. And the other one is around the nature of economic activity, the nature of capitalism. Is it purely about maximizing profit, or are there ethical principles involved? Is there principle at the heart of this? And funnily enough, I think this is one of the things that all countries really have been grappling with during the pandemic is, is it economic well-being or health? And it's a false question. You can't pick one. You have to have both. But it's where the balance goes, I guess, is the point there. Now, I'll leave that chart hanging in the air. But to finish, I'd like to say that personally, I don't think any technology should be allowed to exist unless it either solves a real problem or improves people's lives at scale. So it's no good just changing a couple of people's lives. It has to be at scale. Novelty or newness for the sake of it should be rejected, as should any technology that does not have the potential to make things better for humankind going forward. I mean, I think one of the real problems we've had historically and currently to some extent is that progress is too often defined in very narrow technological or usually economic terms. And we need to focus on much broader and much richer definitions, and actually definitions that might be familiar to many Greeks, but alien to quite a few Northern European neighbors. Definitions that include ideas such as life being what is happening to you right now, that the collective should sometimes eclipse the importance of the individual. Also definitions that emphasize the importance of simply pulling up a chair and talking to somebody else without both people looking at their watches and rushing to be somewhere else. I think we should start treating time as not only relative but somewhat elastic, which I think Southern Mediterranean cultures are very good at, Northern European cultures less good. I think we also need to challenge the importance of speed, the importance of convenience, and the importance, sometimes the false importance of efficiency. Concepts which, to my mind at least, underpin the digital economy. It's all about speed, the Holy Trinity: speed, convenience, efficiency. Efficiency without necessarily looking at effectiveness, I might add. Now, if we challenge that, hopefully we're going to spark a debate about the nature of the ideal society, that age-old question going back more than 2,000 years. And also we might shift the debate away from whether something can be invented to whether something should be invented. Ultimately, we need to have a discussion as a human species. We can start with households, move to organizations, then to regions, then to countries, and then the entire world, and start to have a conversation about what the human species is for and where we're trying to go. And I think the emergence of broad or strong AI is going to bring that conversation to the fore. Once we know where we're trying to get to, then it should be relatively easy to work out whether new digital technologies help or hinder that pursuit. Thank you very much indeed. Ευχαριστώ πολύ.
Thank you, Richard, for a very insightful talk and thought-provoking one, actually. If you can turn on your camera, we can say.
I'm just getting lost in the technology. Just hang on a minute. What's going on?
Just open the application you're using.
Here we go. You've got me?
Well, I see myself now. I guess we can move on if you haven't managed. So let's move on with our next talk. Philippos Zakopoulos, managing partner at Found.ation, will be presenting the key insights from the new editions of Found.ation's annual reports, Digital Transformation in Greece and Startups in Greece. Philippos, the microphone is yours.
Thank you, Neofte. Thank you, Richard, very much. As we see, we all have still problems with technology. We struggle a bit. I want, on my part, also to welcome you, everybody, in our yearly conference. Unfortunately, this year, due to the pandemic effects, our digital transformation workshop couldn't be done in a live format, so we moved as pretty much everybody in a virtual format. But still, it's very important for us that we have you all with us. Myself, for the next few minutes, for the next 10 minutes approximately, I'm going to talk to you about our yearly ecosystem reports. Every year, Found.ation, with the help and the support of EIT Digital, we publish 2 reports looking at the Greek innovation ecosystems. We try to understand the advancements and the challenges, we try to move forward, and we try to map what has been done and what is coming. There are 2 reports. One focuses on the startups of Greece, how they're progressing, how much money have they raised, what are the challenges they're facing, and the other is looking at the corporate transformation, the digital transformation of companies, and how they're advancing. I'm not sure if you can see my presentation. Maybe we have a small problem. I'm going to I'm going to stall and keep talking to you while they bring it on. As you understand, that we all have problems when things are live. Anyway, hopefully now it's going to be live. Here we go. Yes. Okay, so these are the two reports. Very quickly again, startup report, digital transformation in Greece report. One looking at the businesses and the corporate transformation of the country. The other focusing more on the startups and how they're progressing. First of all, one cannot talk about the reports in 2020 without looking at the pandemic effect. The pandemic, the COVID-19 crisis, is still ongoing. It's probably one of the biggest health crises that humanity has faced, and there are a lot of problems and challenges and a lot of issues still to tackle. The vaccinations have started in some countries in the UK, but we still have a long road to cross. But if we look at the pandemic and the effects that it has on our society, we can see a few positive outcomes. In the research that we did in the companies for our reports, we asked the participants of the research, and 93.8, almost 94% of the respondents said that the pandemic has helped them accelerate the speed of change in their companies and in their businesses. So out of the challenges and the problems that the pandemic has created, we saw some positive, and one is that companies understand more the need to change, and companies are turning more to technological innovation and digital transformation in general to tackle these problems. So now let's look specifically at the reports. First of all, I'm going to start with the startup report. And startups in Greece have been progressing. And one interesting finding that we had in 2020 is that we did have progress. One can say that we had progress against all odds, but the truth is that the ecosystem continued its momentum, a momentum that really got sped up by the initiation of the Equifund vehicle back in 2017. But if we look specifically at the Equifund vehicle in 2020, we can see that 30 startups received funding, and they received 34 million euros. This amount of money was the same that startups received in 2019, but in 2020, 30 startups received this amount of money, whereas in 2019, it was 48 companies that received the same amount of money. This proves that we have a slightly maturing ecosystem. Less companies, the same amount of money means bigger tickets. So we see a shift there, we see a transition, and we had some successes. We had 4 exits out of the Equifund vehicle. In total, we had 6 exits of Greek startups. I'm going to say later a few more words. And for the money raised by the Equifund companies, apart from the 34 million that they received directly from VC funds of Equifund, they managed to raise 108 million euros in total. If we look at the complete Equifund vehicle, which is the biggest investment vehicle active currently in Greece, we see that for the last a bit more than 3 years, it has invested in 106 companies, and it has mobilized 92 million euros. But for these 92 million euros that have been mobilized by the Equifund, more money came to match them, and we have these 106 startups raising in total 253 million euros over the last 3 years. So we can claim that the Equifund vehicle has reached a maturity stage, and it has pretty much succeeded in bringing the Greek startup ecosystem in a focus and managing to raise more money apart from its own money. This is really important because it was one of the main goals of the Equifund vehicle when it was being created. But as mentioned, 2020 was a special year. COVID-19 is still ongoing, it's still an ongoing crisis, and it has affected businesses, and of course, it has also affected startups. In the research that we did, we got mixed replies. Some startups said that they were heavily affected by the COVID crisis. They had to proceed to layoffs, they had to let some people go, but other startups said that they continued growing, and they continue hire people, and their business is doing quite well. This is normal, it's to be expected, because the pandemic crisis has affected different sectors in different ways. For example, if a startup is active in the travel sector or in the tourism sector, it is normal to be affected more than other startups, say in digital technology or digital education, that they were not as heavily affected. One important finding, which is to be expected a bit more is that almost 90% of the startups are working remotely. A lot of startups have been working remotely, but the pandemic crisis has accelerated that, and it's normal. Most of them are small companies, they're easy to adapt to changes, and they're agile. Now, moving on to our top 10 lists. Every year we try to gather the top 10 funded companies of every year, as well as the top 10 of all time. In 2020, we saw some successful investments. We saw investments ranging from around in the top 10, 5 million, 6 million, all the way to around 20 million. The biggest investment this year was in Scrooge. Scrooge is quite old Greek startups. As startups go, it's quite old. The exact amount is not disclosed, but it's in the range of 20 million. If we move to the top 10 exits of all time, we see something very interesting for 2020. 2020 saw 3 of the biggest ever exits in Greece. Before, back in 2017, we had the TaxiBit, now called Bit, being acquired by Daimler Group, which was around 40 million euros acquisition. But this year we managed to have investments a lot more than 40 million euro, and the top investment, the top acquisition, this is not an investment, this was an exit, was the acquisition of InstaShop with around $360 million, around 307 million euros. This is an impressive number, and it shows that truly the Greek ecosystem is maturing. And okay, we don't have a unicorn yet, but we're reaching a position that Greek startups are respected around the world, and a lot of investors are looking, or even companies are looking to invest in Greece or buy out in Greece. So I told you some of the key takeaways of the report. Please do take the time to download and dig deeper in the report to find a lot of insights that we have from the research we did. A quick summary here. In total, in 2020, approximately 100 million euros were invested in Greek startups. And as mentioned, the Equifund vehicle seems to be working quite well, because for every €1 that the Equifund is investing, is attracting approximately 2 times more investment by other investors, not only from Greece, but also from Europe and the US, either other VC funds or angel investors. As I mentioned before, InstaShop was the biggest ever exit of a Greek startup. Moving on to our corporate digital transformation corporate report. Again, we have to talk about a new reality, a new work reality. The pandemic has affected the way we live, but it really has affected the way we work. And it really has brought to us a new reality that the current organizational structures that we have need to adapt to the new demands of our era. Of course, the pandemic was a moment in history that was very aggressive, but the digital transformation change has started a long while ago. And I think the pandemic only highlights this change rather than being a single moment in history. As with every transformational change, we need to understand that people are the center. We need to empower our people and help them get the skills and grow and tackle the challenges that this new work reality is throwing at us. But how do you go about doing a business redesign? Okay, we understand that we need to have a restructuring, but how do we do it? We have the tools, the technology is here. A lot of companies during the pandemic crisis turned to technology to solve the problems, turned to communication tools, turned to remote working platforms to do their job. So the tools are here. We have cloud technology, we have AI, we have machine learning, but we need to understand that if we don't focus on the people and if we don't focus on the processes, change is not going to happen on its own. We need to reskill our people. We need to provide to them the educational platforms and the tools that they need to understand this change, and we need to change our processes. Our processes have been designed a long while ago. Most of the businesses that work nowadays, that are active nowadays, have a managerial structure and a procedural structure that is quite outdated. This needs to change. We need to bring forward new agile processes that really help people work remote, for example. Remote working policy is something that really caught on this year. But other changes have to happen in our processes. One positive thing out of the research that we did for the report is that Just a bit more of 90% of the Greek companies that we asked during the research said that there is a well-established digital transformation scope in their company or a digital transformation roadmap. And not only that, out of the respondents that we asked, almost 75%, they said that they're actively involved in this change. They have like a big part to play. They're full-time involved, or at least a big part of their time they're involved. So the companies have understood the need to change, and they're moving forward with the roadmap, with the way forward. Remote working is one of these changes. It is here. In the research that we did, we asked during the crisis, this research we did just a bit more than a month ago. 6 out of 10 businesses that we asked said that over 50% of their workforce is working remotely. This is a huge number if you think about it. A year ago, if we did like our conference a year ago, if we said that in a year, 50% of the businesses will work 50% remotely, it would be unthinkable. But the pandemic has brought effects that we couldn't imagine, and the speed of change was immense. This is one of the main takeaways that we put down during this report, and is the last one on this slide. Businesses can adapt with impressive speed to changes if there is a need, and if there is an alignment, and if there's a culture to change. The pandemic crisis brought something very interesting, and something that we need to appreciate and understand when other things are when we try to put forward other changes in our organization. Because there was a reason, the pandemic crisis was the reason, the COVID-19 crisis, there was an alignment, there was a common target, and there was a non-resistant culture to change. So the people aligned and they managed to move forward together. This is one of the most important findings in our report. You can find some more things if you read it, but I want also to mention another thing, a final thing, that education and training is crucial, because even if you have the alignment, if you have the same goal with the people, you need to provide them the tools, and you need to provide them the platforms to move forward. That is all for me. It's important to highlight that things are changing, not just because of the pandemic, but it's a lot more obvious because of the pandemic. We're moving to a new reality. Technology is an enabler. It's helping us move forward and understand things and solve and tackle problems. And we need to understand that technology as an enabler is not going to take us on its own somewhere. We need to bring the people in the center, and we need with them to help them move forward. Please do take your time to download our report. Unfortunately, you cannot get your physical copy because this is a virtual event, but you can go on our website in our innovation platform under the research and publications, where you can find our report and you can read more information. And as always, we're here to receive your feedback about the reports and any other things you have. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Philippos. We will be closing the evening with a panel discussion hosted by Foundation's Christos Taratsidis, who will be discussing with Eleftheria Kanaki from L'Oreal and George Moschetas from Kaizen Gaming on the importance of upskilling and reskilling in the COVID and post-COVID era. Let's give them a minute to prepare, and they will be very soon with us.
Hi and welcome back to the 2020 Digital Transformation Workshop powered by Found.ation and EIT Digital. I'm Christos Taratsidis, Innovation Lead and Business Development at Found.ation, and I'm about to have a very interesting conversation on the importance of upskilling and reskilling during and after COVID-19 with my two special guests for today. Eleftheria Kanaki, Learning Manager and HR Partner at L'Oréal Hellas. Welcome Eleftheria, and thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, Christos, for the invitation. It's my honor to be in your panel. As a few years back, I was invited as a guest when our collaboration started back then.
That's great. And George Mosketas, Business Manager by the CEO at Kaizen Gaming, also known in Greece as Stichman and Betano. Welcome, George. It's great to have you as well.
Likewise, Christos. It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks to everyone that is watching right now online.
So, I couldn't actually think of someone better to have a discussion on this topic. Eleftheria, you have been responsible for the overall training and development of the group in L'Oréal Hellas over the last 12 years, which is very impressive, and but also pioneering and leading the L'Oréal transformation, cultural transformation project, which sounds very interesting. Want to tell us a bit more about the project?
Of course. L'Oréal, for the last few years, has started a cultural transformational project. Actually, it's a behavioral change project. It started in 2017. As our business was evolving, our consumers and the way we operate evolves, L'Oréal believed that it was the time to incorporate new behaviors in order to create an agile and innovative growth in the best place to work. In other words, it was a project where we had to boost our main values and our main behaviors, such as the belief in our people, entrepreneurship and innovational spirit, and of course the passion for beauty. On the other hand, we had to let go some of our behaviors which were not valid anymore, like, for example, the individualism, the micromanagement, and the product centricity that we used to have. And on the other hand, we had to establish new to us behaviors, such as cooperation and team spirit, trust, fairness, and consumer centricity. So overall, this was the journey, started back then. We have done a lot of work behind it, lots of upskilling to employees on our new behaviors and how we would like to, where we would like to go. Lots of workshops, working groups. So it's a journey.
Yeah, seems like a great initiative from L'Oréal. George, you have seen the project, the product and services side through the years, then the side of people operations and organizational culture. Now you're part of the CEO's team at Kaizen Gaming and overseeing key strategic programs and critical projects within the business.
Yep. So it has indeed been a journey, same as what Eleftheria said, slightly different though, as our starting point was actually being a game tech company. So we have always relied a lot in technology. If you are in the gaming business, and for those that don't know, Kaizen is actually the brand name behind Stichman and Betano internationally. So Betano operates in countries like Romania, Germany, and Portugal, and it's Stichman in Greece and Cyprus. So we always had a good starting point technology-wise, but still, and as my previous title was Head of People and Culture, there are a lot of cultural aspects that you need to take care of. Companies are changing, technology itself is changing, so there's always this bit of learning and transformation that organizations need to go through in order to make sure they are up to date and they're always adapting to the latest trend and change that needs to take place. Yeah.
Great. So what do you say we cut to the chase?
Absolutely.
Training is now more important than ever, Eleftheria, right? But education itself is also undergoing a transformation. It is no longer a question of why, but how to reskill. In which ways is your company, L'Oréal, Eleftheria, trying to keep up to date its employees with all the new technologies and the new skills?
Well, first of all, learning and education is at the core of this business since the beginning of the operation. And one of our mottos is that we grow our people and our clients to grow our business. So indeed, education is an ongoing journey. Our main focus the last years was the digital transformation. Everything started about 6 years ago when the company decides to move towards that direction. We changed partly the structure to incorporate digital experts, and the upskilling journey started with their inner resources. Our digital managers upskilled the whole population gradually. And at some point, about 2 years ago, we decided to collaborate with experts, in this case Found.ation, to bring new knowledge and skills that we didn't have, so as to boost this transformation. This was, I believe, the best preparation, all these years, the best preparation for us, because all this prepared us for the year we all lived. So we were trained to cope with such a difficult year, the COVID year, and adapt to the new needs. Now, moving into this year, as we all know, it was a year of undoing and redoing everything. Okay. So we had to restart the way we do our business. We had to reconnect with our clients, with our consumers, with our employees, and of course, re-educate our people and our clients. So I will focus now on what we did throughout these months, these hard months. We actually focused our education in four main, let's say, pillars. First of all, we wanted to make sure that all our employees had the tools and knew about the tools, how to operate with a new need. Everyone was working from home, a big majority. So the main tool was the Microsoft Teams tool. So we focused that everyone could cope through that. Secondly, we managed to transform our in-class programs into virtual classrooms. That was a big effort we did. We didn't want to cut the learning and the seminars we planned for the year, so we tried to transform them digitally. That was hard, as the coaches and external partners were not there yet, so we did that together. Also, we took the chance that many of our employees stayed at home. That was a great period to educate them and continue working towards that direction. Then, third pillar was we had the chance from the group as an international company. They organized sessions, webinar sessions on different topics like HR, finance, digital, supply chain, and internal speakers from the organization all over the world were presenting their best practices, and they gave tips and exchange on how they manage during the COVID period. We had best practices from Asia, how they did it, how they managed. So this gave us the tools to take some ideas to cope respectively in Greece. And lastly, we have at L'Oréal an online platform, learning platform with lots of resources. So we decided to boost our communication and boost through newsletters those online materials during mainly the first lockdown, so that people can focus on their development and help them cope with the issues we had back then. We focused on remote management and how to help your employees while in remote management way, safety programs, how to work at home, ergonomy, feedback, and soft skills seminars. It was an excellent, I think, period, and people reacted to that as we had a huge increase of our learning hours. We had 68% since 2019 on learning hours, so people really reacted positively towards that direction. So more or less those were the actions, a lot more, but to make 4 main points, okay. We focused our energy there.
Okay, thank you, Eleftheria. Moving on, in a recent survey by ICAP, 54.6% of Greek businesses, George, believe that remote work is less efficient than office work. An important factor leading to this fact is also that employees, people might not be properly trained to work under these conditions. How well would you say you were prepared, George, you at Kaizen Gaming, and what played the most important role to make you feel that you were well prepared?
Well, I think to begin with, it depends a lot on the role. There are roles that simply due to their nature, they will never be productive. They cannot even be implemented remotely. There are others that, again, by nature, they are compromised. But a lot of roles, especially again when it comes to tech-related roles, if you use the right mixture of technology and the ways of working, I think they can be as productive or even more productive when they're done remotely. So, we all have to acknowledge the fact that you do have savings. A major one is commuting. It's awesome to be able to skip 45 minutes going to and from work. And for us, again, due to the nature of the company, we kind of had a head start. So we already had remote workers in the past. As I mentioned before, we operate from multiple locations. So we have 115 people in Thessaloniki. We have offices in 3 other different countries. So we were used at working online with our Google Meets, with our shared documents and everything. So that was a bit of an easy start. Still, we had to adapt. Like Eleftheria said, we had to train our people on how to stay healthy mentally and physically when they are at home. And I think productivity needs to be measured separately on its own with remote working and with COVID. So being locked at home, doing only work, not being able to go out, I think also in a sense it affects your productivity. Also in the very early stages, we did not offer our people the right equipment. So you cannot have a software engineer working with a single laptop with just one monitor. As time went by, we did offer a proper setup, be it a separate monitor, proper lighting, proper audio equipment, proper chairs, desks. And I think since then, productivity has balanced out, and in some cases it has gone up. So from internal surveys, it is single digits that they say that productivity has gone down. The vast majority believes that their own productivity, this is a self-assessment, so it needs to be measured as such, but productivity has gone up. So for me, productivity, if treated, like I said, if treated properly in terms of learning and how to handle it, and in terms of technology and equipment you can offer, in the roles that it is applicable, it can be unaffected.
Okay, that's very impressive. We know that digital transformation, Eleftheria, is not only about technology, but it's also about people, and most importantly, perhaps, and company culture. The pandemic has pushed organizations to focus on their people, their physical and mental well-being, like George said. This requires a different skill set for both managers and lower level employees that revolves around soft skills. What would you say are the most important skills to deal with a new remote workplace and the challenges it poses for productivity and well-being at the same time?
Well, you're very right, and George already mentioned some of the points. We tried to show flexibility and be close to our people. For that, we trained our managers on how to do the remote management, but overall we wanted to be very close to our people. We have lived, our employees have lived different setups, employment, let's say, statuses. For example, some of the employees never worked from home before, so now they had to permanently work from home. Others were out there in the field and keep working under unsafe or difficult situations. Some people had to stay at home and didn't have a job to do, as there were our BAs, for example, the stores were closed. So we had to deal with all different kind of employment statuses. Number one priority was to be close to our people. So our managers, to have a contact, connection with people, see how they feel, how the situation, how they can help. So empathy was one of the main behaviors that worked for us during COVID. Also, we developed a program under a sharing care, let's say wellness, as George mentioned, making sure that we do something for all of us. We had developed team workshops, digital of course workshops on cooking sessions, on how to do your hair at home, makeup sessions. We had storytelling for kids. We also had musical moments. Our employees with talents in music created a nice event. We even invited a big star to sing for the employees of L'Oréal. So with these events during the first lockdown, well, I'm not sure. A famous, very famous one, female singer. So this was the soft skills we tried to develop during that period, and we wanted our employees to feel that the company is next to them.
Okay, nice. Since the beginning of the pandemic, George, it is very often said that the digital transformation of even more traditional or conservative organizations, companies, or whole industries was accelerated by 100 or even more times. What were the challenges you faced during this crisis, and how did you manage to overcome them?
How much time do you have? It was not easy. So I think all organizations had challenges. So I do agree everything was accelerated. So again, we were not prepared, although we were used to it. For example, need for audio equipment and laptops that I mentioned was off the roof. So ETAs from your suppliers, they were crazy. So we had to make amends with personal equipment, transporting equipment with personal vehicles, etc. At the same time, we had to speed up things like single communication and collaboration channel. We went to Slack, not MS Teams. But again, you can see very similar needs. And at the end of the day, our infrastructure, so our VPN and our network, was not set up to support 850 people doing that. So if we wanted to remain secure and do our job properly, we had to really fast update our infrastructure to maintain that. So again, it was a high task. So we had to have some ingenuity, come up with the right solutions, and in the end find the best way to change. So yes, indeed, it was accelerated, but with the proper support, I think we managed to do that. Yes.
Okay. Coming back to you, Eleftheria. A redesign of existing company structures is needed for the next day, as new ways of working will be in place. So the question is, what will L'Oréal look like in a couple of years from now?
Well, I have no idea what will be the structure of L'Oréal in the future. What I can say for sure is that our vision is to become our number one beauty tech company. So definitely we will move to new structures and based on new needs and new job categories. And as we can see from now, we move slowly into a more project management orientation, moving into community teams. Already we have the e-commerce community, we have the digital community. So sharing of best practices information in that way, I think we will move, as well as matrix structures will enable us to move to the next era.
Okay. Same question to you, George. What will Kaizen Gaming look like in 2 years from now?
Absolutely no idea, cannot guess it. But look, change comes from two ways. So Kaizen Gaming, like 2 years ago, we were less than 500 employees only in Greece. In 2021, we're going to be pushing 4 digits. And we have multiple locations, as I mentioned before. So this on its own drives change. But on top of that, the COVID effect, and I agree completely with matrix structures, We saw with this pandemic how important it is to be able to change fast, to be able to read the future and do your best to adapt. So I think we need less rigid structures. We need more easy and fast decision making. We need to find means to hear back from our people more. Some great tips that Eleftheria said before, and I'll try to keep them in mind. But we need to hear more from our people and what their needs are, because the organization needs to adapt its structure according to their needs and offer them the platform in order to be as productive as they need.
Okay. I'm gonna stay with you, George. Is there one piece of advice you would give to other businesses based on your company's experience during this pandemic crisis?
I think it's what I just mentioned. Number one is don't be afraid to change. Change is never easy, but change is as mandatory as it gets. So try to read the future as much as you can. Don't be afraid to change and go for it. And the other one is to listen to your people. So it's always the best source of information. And if you stay close to them, if you do your pulse checks in times like these that they're really heavy on our people, I think you will find your way.
Same question, Eleftheria. One piece of advice to other businesses based on your company's experience during the pandemic.
Well, an advice is to keep the learning budget. It is very important to upskill the employees, learn new tools, new ways of working, and invest in creating a learning culture in the organization. And I believe this year showed us that it is not just the company that invests in one seminar in order to develop the employees. I think we should all believe that learning never stops, and it is the employees' responsibility to keep after their own development. We have the tools, we have the means, so it's important to create this learning approach in order to adapt to change. Now, the second advice is that we have done so many things, the way of working changed, so many changes this year. Many of these changes are here to stay, and we live them in the hard way. I think that the coming year, 2021, it's a year that we will have the time to better organize ourselves, focus on our strategic pillars, and try to anticipate this change. Now, as a human resources person, I think that it is our responsibility to inspire our people to see the beauty behind the change.
Okay, thank you. I think we got some time for one more question, I think. One question and one answer, at least. Actually, I have one more interesting question related to user behavior. George, you have you worked a lot with customer experience teams. So, would you mind taking answer?
Go right ahead.
Okay.
It's your question. Answer.
Besides the organizations, the companies themselves, and the way it affected their business, and mostly related to their workforce, the everyday job, apparently operations. The pandemic has also affected user behavior of the client. The users have changed the way they see products or services, the way they choose and buy things. Their priorities and needs might not be the same in general anymore. So the question is, what did you do to efficiently detect at your company and address these new patterns?
Completely agree. The change has been massive throughout all different industries. I'm sure Eleftheria would testify the same. And it's the same for online gaming. So traditionally there has been, in the last years, a transition of players from offline, so the retail stores, to online. And COVID came in as a catalyst and accelerated, like you said, accelerated that transition around 100 times. So then it is down to each operator to be able to identify the needs, because these people have different needs than the traditional online players. So you have to remember that the retail stores, they have a lot of social aspects, so the human interaction and seeing friends. They have different games, they have different priorities. Normally, they are older people, not necessarily so tech savvy. So it goes again to change. Train your people to welcome change and help them go through that change through learning, etc. And do the same for your business. So we had to change our approach marketing-wise for those people, change the product, CX, simplify some things in order to make sure we address their needs, train our CS, our customer service department, to be able to address and explain things in a more simple, less tech-oriented way in order to be able to help them make the transition and still offer a customer experience that is up to our standards and to make sure that they are satisfied customers of Stichman.
Okay. Well, that was all the time we had. I want to thank you both so much, Eleftheria and George, for being with us today, sharing all your thoughts, knowledge and experiences in this very fruitful discussion. I also want to thank everyone for making this event happen. Our guest speakers, Diva Tommei, Antonis Markopoulos and Richard Watson, our crew here at the Found.ation premises, EIT Digital, and last but definitely not least, the incredible Found.ation team for all the hard work and commitment over the last couple of weeks. And of course, all the viewers, everybody at home, at the office, or anywhere else. Unfortunately, not too many options these days for keeping us company over the last almost 2 hours. I hope to see all of you soon in our next event, so stay tuned. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and enjoy the holidays.
us.